Master actually brought a girl back from the mortal realm. I was so excited I inhaled 2 bowls of rice. After 3,000 years of waiting, that ancient tree of ours has finally blossomed. I don't know what got into Master back then, making a rule that whoever falls in love first is a dog. It left all 500 of us disciples stuck being single for 3 whole millennia. I skipped along happily, pushed open the door to Master's bedroom, only to see that woman twisting his ear, shouting in a fit of rage. The atmosphere was painfully awkward. I silently backed away, hoping to vanish quietly without making a sound.
Ouch, that hurts. Mother.
Mother. The woman's expression shifted instantly.
You changed your tune pretty quickly, girl. It's making me a little shy.
I think I'm the one who really needs a moment to recover. My handsome immortal master, my love life, is completely over. And so am I. Master finally noticed I was there.
Does a misunderstanding with your master really upset you that much?
I need some peace and quiet.
Whose peace and quiet?
I was just a lazy princess in the mortal realm, hoping that after my coming of age, my father would find me a husband. Even a handsome fire-breathing dragon would have been fine. Who would have thought? On my wedding day, there was no groom, and definitely no dragon, just a cold, aloof immortal who looked like he had no desires at all, descending on colorful clouds to take my life. He was just here to take me back as his apprentice. I was instantly bewitched by Master's looks, lost my heart, and just followed him away like a fool.
Girl. How are you going to get by without your old man?
If I hadn't caught a glimpse of not a single ripple on my father's face, I would have almost been fooled. In the 1,000 years I spent as his disciple, I pulled out all the stops, yet still failed to open his heart, or even get a peep out of it. There are 3,000 paths to enlightenment. If one doesn't work, just pick an easier one. From then on, I changed my strategy. I took all the notable, handsome immortals inside and outside our sect, and compiled them into a book. As the saying goes, as long as your fish pond is wide enough, melancholy will never catch up to you. Just when I was planning to make my move on the handsome men in the book, one by one, that handbook of immortal flirtation somehow fell into my master's hands. As a result, my ethereal, otherworldly master promptly set a new sect rule. What's this about whoever falls in love first is a dog? Are you kidding me? I've been a single dog for 1,000 years. Do you think I'm afraid of becoming a dog in love? Seeing that I had no reaction,
He added that whoever finds a partner first will be fined 300,000. Call it a head start on the pain of heartbreak.
This devious, cunning old man. Don't think I didn't hear you just lost 300,000 tails at the card table trying to fleece me, are you? I'm not falling for it.
Chin up, junior sister. Keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting.
Seeing my dispirited state lately, the senior brother was cheering me on from the side just as I was about to pour out my grievances to him. A gust of wind blew, and the senior brother's hairpiece was swept up into the sky, revealing that shiny, sparkling bald head. Forget it. This kind of pain is something the senior brother probably doesn't understand. 3,000 years. It has been exactly 3,000 years. Everyone in our sect is a man, and they're all cursed with the lone star of loneliness. I also remember, during an assessment held by a major sect, a group of cultivators we barely knew approached us and their first words were,
You must be the disciples of the Baldy Pavilion, right? My respects, my respect.
Listen, whose dream just shattered? Sigh, it was mine. I asked the second senior brother, why is everyone so neatly shaven? The second senior brother instantly drew his grand sword and performed a flashy set of sword moves for me.
Women, only slow down the speed of my sword.
I couldn't help myself. I gave him a big thumbs up, then glanced down at his crotch and asked with extreme caution. Second senior brother, is your little brother still doing okay down there? Thwack, my head took a solid hit. Master appeared out of nowhere like a ghost.
What I taught your second senior brother is the heart-severing sword art, not that sunflower manual you have in your head.
Thwack. This time, it was Master who got hit. Master's mother was standing there with a rolling pin, one hand on her hip.
How many times have I told you? You have to be gentle with little girls.
I put on a pitiful look, grabbing my sleeve to cover half my face. It's okay, Auntie Man. I'm used to it. Master definitely didn't mean to knock a bump onto my head. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Master's expression getting uglier by the second. He was desperately signaling me with his eyes to stop talking. What a stroke of bad luck. When I lived in the palace as a child, I'm useless at everything. I learned every trick in the book. From the concubines back at the palace, my tears began to flow instantly. Auntie Man's rage reached its boiling point. Auntie Man took a sharp breath.
Get in here, you.
Before long, inside the main hall, I could hear Master begging for mercy. I sobbed and called out to them. It's okay, Auntie Man, it really doesn't hurt. My head isn't dizzy at all.
Chu Huan, shut your mouth right now. Ow, 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 mom. It hurts.
My senior brothers stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. From that day on, a saying spread throughout the sect. You can mess with anyone, but never the youngest junior sister. Oh, stop it. Stop it now. Stop it. I'm such a gentle and sweet person, so understanding. After that beating incident, Auntie Man would call me over every now and then to test her poisons. Wait, no. I mean, to test her cooking. Auntie Man is good at everything, except for her obsession with making bizarre dishes. This is not going well. It's extremely life-threatening. In just this month alone, my senior brothers have carried me to the infirmary 15 times.
Hey, pretty lady, want to open a loyalty card? 15 off for every 60 spent. It's a great deal.
I clutched my stomach and opened my eyes weakly. Doctor. I bet you're from the islands, aren't you?
How could you tell?
But I was poisoned too deeply and passed out. When I woke up, I found out. The doctor was so happy. He gave me a 40% discount. He even told my senior brothers to welcome me back anytime. Out of guilt, Auntie Man took all the treasures from Master's storage, hauled them all out, and gave them to me. I sat bolt upright from my deathbed. Isn't that storage where Master keeps his marriage fund?
Marriage fund, indeed. He can't even find a female insect nearby. What's the point of keeping all that stuff?
I formed an alliance with Auntie Man and without a shred of mercy stuffed all the treasures into my bag. The moon hung over the willows and the night breeze was gentle. I listened as Auntie Man chatted about the stories of the past. I picked up my notebook and carefully recorded Master's jokes. Master brought another girl back from the mortal world. This time, I had finally grown up. I no longer wore my heart on my sleeve. Among a group of brothers bursting with gossip, I appeared exceptionally mature. The girl's name was Tianro. She looked just like her name, cloyingly sweet to the point of nausea. Watching the tough guy tenderness in the brothers' eyes, for the first time, I began to question their taste.
I bought a small fan. Hee hee. Whoosh. Ah.
My senior brothers lost their footing and fell forward in a heap. The door opened. I remained standing. My brothers used the fastest running speed of their entire lives and fled the scene. A gust of wind picked up, stinging my face. We stared at each other, neither willing to speak first. 2 lines of hot tears rolled down, leaving the coquette next to me, stunned and speechless. Even Master was defeated. He said softly,
If you don't like it.
Oh, my eyes were so sore from staring at him. Master, could you just speak plainly next time? I was tossed out of the bedroom by Master. The moment the door closed, I thought I caught a look of mockery in the coquette's eyes. Ever since that coquette joined the sect, I haven't been able to eat chicken skin. Every day, just from my own skin alone, I could shed 2 pounds of goosebumps. When I was sparring with my senior brother, right in the heat of the fight, a voice piped up.
Here comes the little flying stick.
Successfully causing us all to trip and fall flat on our faces. I even saw the roosters kept by the sect start walking with their legs crossed. The senior brothers finally realized the gravity of the situation. They cornered me in a dead end.
Junior sister, for the future of our sect, we senior brothers have a difficult task to entrust to you.
Ha ha ha. I'm unworthy, truly unworthy.
No, this particular matter. Only you can handle it.
My heart skipped a beat. Isn't that a bit inappropriate? If you senior brothers have a crush on someone, you really should go woo them yourselves, you know. I acted coy, looking slightly nervous and bashful.
The senior brothers stood there, stunned. Junior sister, don't lump us in with Master.
That's not our cup of tea at all. What? I was dressed up by my senior brothers to look all delicate and dainty and sent before Master. The errand my senior brothers sent me on was to win Master over, to restore peace to our sect. I originally didn't want to agree, but they offered way too much. I looked at my peach blossom sprite outfit and couldn't help but wonder, is this really going to work? Master looked up and scanned me, his expression frozen for a second before he gave an order.
Grind the ink for me.
My heart soared with delight. Without leaving a trace, I pushed aside the clingy girl next to him. The clingy girl wouldn't be outdone, busying herself serving tea and massaging his shoulders and legs. Once she finished, she gave me an arrogant look. Humph. How ridiculous. I slammed the ink stick onto the floor, the resulting noise startling the clingy girl so much she jumped, even causing her to stutter. Master looked up at me as well. Oh. This ink stick is truly wicked. Why won't it just stay put? It insisted on sliding away. The clingy girl was stomping with rage. I picked up the ink stick, as if nothing had happened at all. Master raised an eyebrow.
Inanimate objects are just that. People, however, have a mind of their own.
Master is right. I shall accept my punishment and apologize. I was kicked out again, and my sword was confiscated. Thankfully, that was just the sword I borrowed from the second senior brother. For a while now, I feel like I've regressed to those days when I first joined the sect. Every single day, I'm plotting on how to win over Master, but my mindset is quite different now. Before, I was only after his looks, but now, it's strictly business. My senior brothers saw right through my half-hearted attitude. They threatened to seize my silver. I clutched my purse tight. That simply won't do. The once-in-a-millennium sect examination had begun. We've taken top honors every single time. It's no big deal. While other sects were busy courting, everyone in our sect was working themselves to the bone.
Huh. Chuan.
I turned at the sound of the voice and saw a familiar face. It was my second uncle's daughter. She's the same age as me and joined the sect in the same year I did. But unlike me, her son is already old enough to run errands.
Quick, call her auntie.
I put on a calculated smile and pulled the clinger girl over. The poor girl must have been dazed by my shove because she actually called out obediently.
Auntie.
You have to admit, it sounded just like any other kid's voice. It left the poor girl completely bewildered. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Master's lips twitch for a second. For a man to maintain that master persona of his, he must be exhausted from holding it in. If you ask when I gave up on chasing Master, it was probably that afternoon when I accidentally caught him in a secluded corner, furiously cuddling the cat I had been feeding. Or perhaps when I caught him during his daily meditation, actually snoring away. Or maybe it's as if the world is collapsing and he's the only one holding it all together with his mouth. Conclusion: after spending 1,000 years chasing after something I can never have, this lady is done playing along. I cast a sidelong glance at the other sects, at the lively and spirited young Taoists. Then I glanced back at my master, who drags that clingy girl everywhere. What am I supposed to do? I really don't want to admit it, but I'm quite close with him. Just then, a man in green robes stepped onto the sparring platform, ready to begin the duel. I know him. He is the idol on my list. Go for it, brother Zicheng. I shouted with excitement. Zicheng heard me and gave me a gentle smile. See? This is what a true immortal idol looks like. Unlike someone else, I instinctively shot a look of disdain at my master. He happened to catch my gaze, so I quickly stopped. That was close. My eyes almost twitched. Something flew into my eye. I laughed awkwardly, trying to cover up my lie. The expression I just made. Master gave me a rare, doting smile and gently patted my head.
Is he good looking?
Self-preservation forced me to shake my head. At the end of the sect examination, there is a team battle. Everyone enters the game. The entire sect enters the 9-star tower to begin the trial. I understand the reason, but why does that clingy girl have to take the test with us too? The first 6 floors were fine, just full of common low-level demons. Just a difference in the sheer number of them. But once we hit the 7th floor, I found myself separated from all my fellow disciples. I was left staring blankly at the clinger dot.
Sister, please stop staring at me like that. I'm scared. Sister.
The clinger pouted, trying to act cute. I honestly think, compared to the challenges we were about to face, the psychological torture inflicted by the clinger was far more terrifying. I wonder if psychological trauma is covered by our medical insurance. As expected, trouble arrived right on cue. As we scrambled up to the 8th floor, I realized the ground beneath us was shaking violently. The clinger grabbed onto my leg, crying and snotting all over me. Together,
Senior sister, I don't want to die. I have an 80-year-old mother at home.
Shut it. That sound. It seemed to be drifting down from the 9th floor.
Senior sister.
I had warned her, but before I could even finish my sentence, I was snatched up by a massive claw. I was trying to warn you
that there was something behind us.
The clinger. No, wait, that's not right. I should say, it was my beloved junior brother. He was staring at me so pitifully. Men really do only get in the way of my sword speed. That was my final thought before I was hauled away. Who could have guessed that I would turn misfortune into a blessing, skipping the 8th floor entirely and landing straight on the 9th? Though, if I weren't currently being held in the palm of this mother dragon, it would be even better.
Hey! Who are you? Aren't you the one who abducted me? I intended to capture the little clinger beside Divine Lord Molan.
Speaking of that little clinger, the dragon's eyes were practically spewing fire. Literally spewing fire. Hey, I'm just taking the fall for someone else here. Perhaps this dragon never imagined that the little clinger was actually my precious junior brother. No wonder she mistook her target and snatched me instead. So, what do you intend to do now? You've captured me, and now I can't finish my mission. I've actually calmed down quite a bit now. From the dragon's words, it wasn't hard to conclude that this was another one of my miserable master's old romantic debts. I never would have guessed that my master, with his ancient, immortal air, was actually quite indiscriminate in his private affairs. Hey! If my master finds out that you've harassed his beloved disciple. You'll be bringing shame upon our sect. I let out a sigh, observing the dragon from the corner of my eye. A look of guilt appeared on the dragon's face as she pulled back her giant claw and set me down on the ground.
Don't you worry. This top spot belongs to you.
The dragon tapped her chest, reassuring me. Then she turned and dove into the cold spring behind her. Not long after, she poked her head back out.
A gift for you.
A water blue orb was spat from her mouth and landed in my palm. The moment I gripped the pearl, I was enveloped in a gentle glow. When I opened my eyes again, I was already outside the tower. The open grounds were unnervingly silent. Everyone was staring at me in shock.
Truly worthy of being the prized disciple of Master Mullen. It is a case of the student surpassing the master.
The heads of other sects offered their endless congratulations to my master. It was only after the event that I realized I had emerged from the tower 3 days earlier than the leaders of the major sects had predicted. Furthermore, those who had successfully cleared the 9th floor usually emerged half dead. Fortunately, that dragon was a pushover. Speak. Who came up with this plan? After returning to the mountain, Master still wanted my junior brother to keep playing the delicate damsel. I took all the women's dresses he had hidden and slashed them all into rags.
It was him.
Leaving only my junior brother dumbfounded and in total disbelief, I sneered and spread out the contract my junior brother had given me earlier right in front of Master. Humph. You asked him to play the damsel and rewarded him with 100,000 taels a month with such a lucrative gig. Why didn't you ask me? 100,000 taels, just one act and I'd be set. Who wouldn't be tempted by that? Seeing my junior brother getting rich while I lost money and felt aggrieved while I was still deep in the sorrow of missing out on the gold, Master grabbed me once more and tossed me out of the bedroom. I stood up calmly, brushed the dirt off my clothes and turned toward the closed door, giving it a friendly gesture. You old phony, do you really think I can't guess what you're planning? Once the cat was out of the bag regarding the coquettish act, the pact between the disciples and me fizzled out into nothing. My stellar performance in the sect's grand trials also attracted many handsome immortals who sought to chat with me. Consequently, I returned to my old profession and compiled a new volume of my Guide to Wooing Men. It was even more detailed than the last one, even noting down their specific measurements. After all, my cultivation had improved over these years, and my eye for men had become much sharper. However, this time, with anti-man joining in, even Master dared not say a word. The entire sect was shrouded in a lingering, resentful gloom. I glanced at the source of the resentment, sneered coldly, and didn't look at them again. Anti-man. Brother Zicheng has invited me to wander the world with him for the next 2 months. I won't be able to keep you company. I heard the sound of a sword snapping in two.
That's fine. You young ones should go out and see the world. I have no such hopes for my rebellious son. So I can only hope that you will produce a plump baby for me to hold soon.
The flower pot outside seemed to crack as well. I feigned shyness and didn't talk back. Late at night, as I was packing my travel bag, I was suddenly enveloped by a pungent scent of alcohol. Master suddenly appeared before me and pulled me into his embrace. Heh, heh, heh. The illustrious god Mullen. Using his teleportation arts just to sneak into his disciples' chambers at night, I let him hold me. But my words were merciless. The corners of Master's eyes were flushed with a faint crimson, and his usually stoic expression slowly melted into a captivating smile. You are truly a bewitching fox. I was naturally drawn to you because of that very charm. Who knew that when I met your aggressive advances, you would remain as steady as a mountain? He just stared at me like that, without uttering a single word. I wrapped my arms around his neck and whispered in his ear, a breath of wind, and I could truly feel him tremble. Master, do you not realize how seductive you are right now? I reached out, and with my fingertips, I lightly traced his features, stopping only at his Adam's apple. The mood was set, yet I halted any further provocation. Master, you should return to your room and rest. I still have things to do tomorrow. My master's lips were clumsy yet fierce, leaving me unable to resist for even a moment. The flower pot outside seemed to crack again. I think I even heard the cries of my fellow disciples.
Chu Huan. I surrender.
Master knew that was not what I wanted to hear. I suppressed the wild joy in my heart and feigned indifference. Master lifted his head and gazed solemnly into my eyes.
I am fond of you. The kind of fondness that hopes to spend a lifetime together.
My journey, in the end, was not cancelled after all. It was just that the person accompanying me had changed to Master. After I questioned him repeatedly, I finally understood. The reason he pushed me away before was because he wanted me to focus on my cultivation. After all, back then, I still had a mortal body with a limited lifespan. Who would have thought that just as I finally developed immortal veins, I lost interest in him and even started writing some silly guide on how to flirt. An old antique who had lived for tens of thousands of years. For the first time, he felt his heart stir, yet he didn't know what to do. He could only establish such bizarre sect rules, just trying to muddle through one day at a time. Seeing that I remained unmoved, he panicked. The heavens collapsed and the earth split, all held up by his lips alone. That is my highest praise for him. I had hoped to wander a few more months, but the outcome truly matched Anti-Man's prophecy. I returned to the mountain ahead of schedule. I am with child. My master's face is filled with the joy of a man who has found fatherhood in his twilight years. A single glance of love during my youth. Who would have thought it would cost me an entire lifetime?